Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Brian Curtis. I'm the Fool. Like, share, and subscribe. And tell your friends of the Fool. Eclipse, or yesterday's realizations and deeper understandings. So this is one thing that I didn't get, and I just kind of put the pieces together. You get pieces of things, and then they kind of come together, and then you are like, "Ooh, wow, that's cool." So evolution, right? How does evolution happen? Evolution, we're always taking the genes or the structures from each other, from two people, and getting the best genes in there. Now, how does that happen? And this is a natural evolutionary thing. Everything in conflict ends up destroying each other, right? Like if you're in conflict with your environment, you're destroying yourself, because we are all one, right? So, and this is interesting because, this is something that I heard from somebody, and I looked it up, and they've never caught this on film, is the sperm making it through the outer part of the egg. Now, it's interesting that the sperm doesn't ever go through the membrane. Somehow it transmutes from the outside to the inside of the egg, and then the egg's fertilized. You just see it surrounded by all these millions of sperm, and then all of a sudden it's fertilized, and then the ones that didn't make it fall away. And the ones that didn't make it are the ones that are fighting to get inside, if that makes sense. So this is something that is biblical in ways, and it's also an ascension process, your evolutionary process, because when you're staying in submission, or you're in surrender, a state of surrender, where you're kind of at the altar and you're just allowing things to happen, and you're just bringing information forward, right? You're just speaking things into existence. You're not actually forcing anything, if that makes sense. I was told, and correct me if you guys know this in the comments, but the rabbis knew that the Holy of Holies, or the curtain that went around the Holy of Holies in Solomon's temple, didn't have a break in it. There was no way to penetrate the curtain. You came up to the curtain, and you were in supplication in front of the curtain. So you're in a state of surrender, right? You're like the sacrificial lamb. So you're not in conflict with anything. You're just in a state of surrender and unconditional love, and that's how you enter the Holy of Holies, the marriage supper of the Lamb, if you might say. Everything points to that in your own state of evolution. For example, I'll do like cold water therapy, and you'll get cold if you are psychologically reacting to the cold water. So like if you and I've done this a couple times. I jumped in the Columbia River like 2 weeks ago, and I was in a state of mind where I was in total surrender, and I could feel the difference in like how the water was feeling, but I wasn't exactly reacting to it, if that makes sense. And so after about, I would say, 30 to 60 seconds, I kind of got to a state of equilibrium. I could tell my body I was losing feeling of any sensation of cold or hot sensation in the water. It just felt like this fluid liquid I was in. And the temperature outside was like, it's probably 60 degrees, and the water temperature was maybe 40, 45 degrees. It wasn't freezing, but it was cold. Comparatively speaking. And so I just sat there and I waited to see how long it would take before I would maybe start to feel cold. And I never really did. I stayed in there for about 20, 25 minutes, and my dad was waiting for me. I was actually curious to see how long I could just sit in there, just in this state of surrender, and just not thinking about the water at all, right? You're just meditating and kind of just letting things go. And then see how long it would take before I would get to a discomfort, any kind of discomfort, right? Mental discomfort, physical discomfort, any kind of discomfort. I never did. And even when I exited the water, the wind wasn't blowing, but my body didn't feel like it was reacting to the change in temperature even when I got out of the water, if that makes sense. I could tell that my body was in a different state because my body was becoming accustomed to the temperature of the water. But I wasn't trying to fight it, if that makes sense. So when we're in our environments, that's how we learn to listen more acutely. When we're not in conflict with whatever's going on, we're just listening and then providing for that however it needs, right? Because you're voicing a need for that environment if it's in conflict. Same thing happens in the sperm, right? The most enlightened sperm isn't in conflict with its environment. It presents itself to the egg and then is pulled inside the egg if it is at the highest state of awareness, or it's the highest energetic level that is being accepted at that time. Everything else is in conflict, right? If it's at a lower energetic level, if it's a lower frequency, it has more conflict. Yeah, everything is so interesting, right? And that applies to so many different things when you think about it in our life. That's the definition of a really healthy relationship. When two people, we're going to just use two people as an example, because groups of people become a lot more complicated because it becomes more difficult you can surrender to a group of people. And actually, I mean, kind of that's what I'm doing right now for the business community. The community is large after writing a book, is that you're just surrendering to it and just allowing yourself to listen to what it needs. And then you channel information. The YouTube tarot readers are channeling different types of information for different groups depending on their own level of awareness as to what's going on there. Most of it is in conflict. Most of the time, the readings that you see are in some type of conflict. And actually, even if the reader is highly enlightened, they're pulling somebody out of a lower state of awareness to make sure that they're not in conflict with their environment, if that makes sense. Now, you also have to get to a place where you can cut energy off that's pulling from you at the same time. So if you've got something that's pulling on you and it shouldn't be pulling on you, then you have to be able to stop that, right? The end of Kung Fu Hustle, if you guys have watched Kung Fu Hustle, that's the enlightened Kung Fu warrior just says stop. And then, I'm not in conflict with you. I love you unconditionally. And so he doesn't actually, at the end of that movie, he doesn't kill the beast. He just forces it to, it's the palm move. He forces it cannot attack him anymore. The enlightened state. Because you're not harming anything in your environment. So as long as you're in that state of unconditional love, it cannot harm you. It can't attack you. Yeah. And so that's how, because, every sexual act, every successful sexual act is an act of love, of unconditional love, where you're accepting your environment and then you come into union. If you're not in acceptance of it at all, or you're in conflict with it at all, it's not going to be successful, right? I mean, look at the Middle East right now. It's just a bunch of people that are in conflict with each other, saying they're unconsciously victimizing each other because they feel like the other party is victimizing them, it's just all illusion and delusional mind playing. Instead of being in a state of surrender to where you can communicate that we are both in a state of surrender to each other, and this is the enlightened state, that's what gets you out of conflict. Mahatma Gandhi was like one of the best examples of this, right? Where he tried to, teach everybody that they were just not it doesn't matter what the other people are doing or how they're attacking you. When you're in a state of surrender and you're not in conflict, then eventually the other side will face some serious karma if it's constantly trying to attack you. Because it's like, I'm not attacking you. I'm not doing anything. I'm at peace. Totally peaceful. Happy Sunday. I'll let you guys stew on that for a while. The Holy of Holies is a barrier that cannot be forced across. You can't force yourself into the marriage supper of the Lamb. It's always a state of surrender. And that's how you get the information to provide for the female to enter the Holy of Holies. There's no way that you can enter unless you have the correct information. And the only way to get that is through surrender. Yeah. Hard lesson. Takes a lot of patience. And make sure that, everyone's at that state. And then you start creating groups that are in that state. And then what are you going to do against a group of people that are in a state of surrender and they're not in conflict with anybody? Now, you are in conflict if you're trying to draw energy from people. That's why money is the number one thing now that causes conflict in our environment. Because it's like, I won't do this unless I get this. Right? So you're always in conflict with somebody. When somebody tries to sell you something, it's like, hey, I've got a service for you, but I can't do it for you unless I get this from you. So you're in conflict. If you're always in a state of surrender, you just do what you're asked, and then everything becomes easier. Then you just become a kid again. I hope that makes sense for you guys. But at the same time, you don't want to let people just draw energy off you. Right? You still have to put the palm up. Love you guys. Happy Sunday. I think I might start doing readings because there's so many things to talk about and teach, and how that can be applied in personal lives, and just doing spreads where I can focus on what the collective needs to hear, right? Because if you're in any kind of heartbreak, like if you're allowing heartbreak in any way, it just means that you're not you're getting emotionally attached to an outcome. And if you're emotionally attached to an outcome, then you won't be able to make a good decision, because the right thing to do is to keep managing your own energy and not letting other people's decisions affect your decisions. Once you know the truth, and then all you do is just create positive energy into your environment. And if people want to, pull off of you unnecessarily, and don't want to work with you directly, to create healthy groups, then you just, stop. I'm not interested. And so, knowing that means that you have to be patient and keep spreading your truth to the world around you and detoxifying that system that is trying to pull off of each other all the time. Long process. Worth the wait. Just be brave. Very courageous. Love you guys. Have a great Sunday, and I'll be on here later. Maybe do a reading later tonight. I don't know. We'll see.